Welcome back into the Midtown Madness podcast with Peter Hale and Zach Miller. I'm Zach Miller. Peter Hale's joined alongside me. Pete, what's going on, man? We had a big week this week. We got an even bigger week we're going to look forward to.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff this week. It's been a busy weekend for SLU sports, and looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, we're going to cover in detail the games from this week. We're going to just give a heads up of the games the next week because Peter and I are both out of commission Sunday of next weekend. But we may have something drop on Monday for you guys. Still, we're working that out. It's a maybe. Hopefully we'll get it done. Pete, we have basketball news. We have men's basketball news. Not super over the top exciting, but it's news, and that's something I think we've been kind of starved for.
Yeah, Javonte Perkins nominated for the James E. Sullivan Award. He's a finalist, and the James E. Sullivan Award, the AAU James E. Sullivan Award, I think is the full name, which is presented by East Bay. Has been presented annually since 1930 to the most outstanding athlete in the United States. Is this an award you were familiar with before this?
I've never heard of it. What's interesting to me is the AAU is giving it out, and there was kind of a tint to it that was focused on amateur athletes, but of course, some of the finalists on the ballot are definitely not amateur or no longer amateur. You got Olympian in track and field, Allison Felix, Illinois basketball player, Ayo Dosunmu. I can never get that right. I will never get his name right. Caleb Dressel, who needs no introduction. Gonzaga basketball player, Drew Timme, Obi Toppin, Simone Biles, and Suni Lee are also on the list of finalists. I mean, big names for Javonte Perkins to be next to.
Yes, and the AAU thing that was my first impression too. I was thinking, okay, so we're talking about like college athletes and maybe Olympic athletes here, and then it was like, okay, well, wait, there's a couple like high level, pro athlete like Obi Toppin. I don't think can stake any claim to amateurism for a little while now. So I'm not quite sure. I guess I got to read up a little more on how the nomination process goes, but nonetheless, it's really cool to see his name on here with all of these luminaries. I have a hard time believing that with so many nationally known names that that he would stand a chance against this crew. But truly, I mean, this is a case where just to be nominated is a pretty cool honor.
Absolutely. You got a prediction on who's going to win it? It's a 2-woman race in my mind.
Between the gymnastics
yes.
duo here. Yeah. I mean, that's certainly, I think that the argument there is pretty strong.
Yeah. Unfortunate that Javonte Perkins is going up against some of the most popular athletes in the country, if not the world right now.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny, his name came up in a John Rothstein tweet this week as a candidate for players who are going to become stars this season. I think he put 15 in his article, a list of 15. And I really liked your reply that it's not that he's becoming a star, it's that people are going to notice because he's no longer the third name on the marquee.
Yeah. And I wonder, it's an interesting topic of conversation that I don't think I remembered to put in our notes, but I'm really glad you brought it up. How does becoming the focal point of the offense affect Javonte Perkins going into the season, do you think?
Honestly, I think we're going to see a similar level of production out of him. We have more offensive firepower this year, so it'll get spread out a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just going to be, we're just going to see a lot of different looks, a lot of different styles. We're so deep at guard, really experienced, but really getting away from what Goodwin and French did to this, this team, this dynamic. As much as I love those two, there are times when the offense can kind of get bogged down. And I got to think Perkins is going to be every bit, if not more, productive this season.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I do realize there were, times, last year where he, it seemed like maybe he just kind of became the focal point of defenses and maybe kind of struggled to kind of, adjust to that. And I hope that, he, with his new, his body type, I guess, and his improvement over the offseason, I think he's in a better position to take those beatings from physical defenses.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good point. So I think the key this season is you really need guys like Jimerson and Hargrove and Nesbitt, especially. You need guys like that to really be consistent and productive and efficient, so that opposing defenses can't kind of, to really throw everything at stopping Perkins, because they know we don't have as many scoring threats around the perimeter. So I hope that kind of frees him up a little bit to do his thing. And yeah, he'll definitely be able to play a more physical game this season as well.
And I'm muted. Yeah. Yeah, good. I haven't done that in a while, actually. I was kind of due for that. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how how his athleticism improves and how that can help him kind of create his own shot in the way we've become accustomed to seeing at the elbow, and then getting to the hoop so smoothly, whether that explosiveness will even improve further. So that's an exciting thing. I think that's a big time subplot for this season as far as Javonte Perkins. We already know he's elite, but how much more elite can he get?
Yeah, and I mean, like, definitely the thing that's happening right now is like it's no longer a secret. He's no longer
Right.
this guy who's scoring 17 points or whatever a game that that casual fans have not heard of. His name keeps popping now on this award and Rothstein's list, and it's going to keep showing up on season previews, especially for the A10. So, he's going to have a target on his back this season, and I hope the rest of the team's there to pick up the slack for him. Jimerson kind of regains his form, and Nesbitt really lives up to his potential.
This may be the dumbest question I've ever asked on the podcast, but we know that coaches have advanced analytics, advanced video scouting. How much, and obviously they're seeing it on video, how much do you think that they actually use the internet to see these headlines and see this kind of stuff? Or is it more the players that kind of get into that?
Oh boy, I think that probably depends on the player and the coach. I mean, there are some people who are just very online compared to others. I mean, like, if any of these guys are actively on Twitter, I mean, we see who they follow and everything. Like, if they're following other coaches, other writers and stuff like that, they're maybe not necessarily coaches, but if they're following enough college basketball people, there's no way that they're not going to see some of these, headlines and lists and whatnot. So it's just a matter of how much they can kind of tune out all the noise and whether they want to. I really don't know. I mean, it's sort of, I think it just depends on the staff. It was a lot easier, 10, 15, 20 years ago to ignore this kind of stuff, but you can't anymore if you have any sort of social media presence.
Yeah, it's crazy how much, like, I say it every day that, like, as much as I love this podcast, like, I hate that I have to be on social media for it. Like,
Yeah.
and that's where like West Pine Bills thrives, is on the social media. I try, I do my best. I don't like reading it and whatnot. I just don't like going through the news. Anyway, speaking of news, tangentially related to St. Louis University. I love tangentially. I love using that word. I barely use it correctly, but I get it done. Belmont is moving from the OVC, the Ohio Valley Conference, to the Missouri Valley Conference. Now, this is a name I've thrown around many times as a team I'd like to see in the A10. What do you think? Is the A10 doing itself a disservice by getting beaten out to Belmont by the MVC?
I don't, to me, this kind of says that the A10 never really pursued them. I guess I would be curious to know how this developed, like how this went. I didn't necessarily know that the Valley was shopping around for more members. I think they're at 10 now, and this would give them 11, which gives them the ability to go to a 20 game home and home if they want to. I don't know if that, I guess it's debatable at that level whether it's beneficial or not. It's kind of right at the cutoff point of where a conference, wants more games or not. But I don't know if this means the A10 just was never involved in a conversation with Belmont. I really don't know. So we can only kind of speculate there, but it certainly doesn't look great. I mean, the other question is, I don't know that the A10 necessarily wants to go to 15 teams. That's pretty bulky. 14 is already pretty cumbersome. And we certainly have some, I guess you could call them underperforming members. So I guess I would just like to know how that all developed. Now, all of that said, I think Belmont, as they are this season, would immediately be the best team in the Valley. Loyola's going to have a little bit of a transition period under a new coach. And as good as, Drake and some of these other programs are, I think Belmont's just a little bit better this season. And this certainly makes the Valley stronger. Since they lost Creighton, I think it's kind of been a solid, again, that term mid-major conference. There are years where they can get multiple bids in the tournament if things break right. But I think Belmont there certainly makes them a conference that's probably going to put 2 into the tournament most seasons. I really like that conference at the top now, actually.
I agree.
What's your thought here? I mean, do you think this was complacency by the A10?
I think it has a lot to do with having so many teams already. Unfortunately, you have it's going to be almost impossible to get rid of Fordham unless it's kind of like when you want to break up with a girl, but like you don't actually want to break up with a girl, so you just kind of like are passive aggressive and kind of bratty, that kind of thing. It's kind of like that. I feel like the A10 can't really kick them out, but like.
Yeah, except it's more like it's more of a marriage because you're
Yeah.
financially tied together, like how conferences don't just kick members out. Like it just doesn't, I don't know of circumstances. I mean, think of all of the horrible scandals at some of these schools and not for a second has it been thought that a conference would kick them out. Even when SMU had the death penalty now, over 30 years ago, they weren't kicked out of it just doesn't happen. So as much as people will get mad at Fordham or whatever other, bottom dwelling school there might be in the A10 that people are frustrated with, I don't see that. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's kind of A10's in a weird spot because I think the majority of the schools would in the A10 value geography over maybe moving away from the geography for a better team. And I think Belmont is one of those that's right on the cusp where you could make a case for them being an East Coast team or an Eastern team, but also you're moving the footprint west. And that's something that I think every school in this conference, save for ourselves and Dayton, have no interest in.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think also just getting bigger is not something. I think, yeah, sure, like maybe they would go to 15 or 16 if it was 2 absolutely great, strong programs and fits, but I'm not quite sure.
Like if somebody came down from like, I don't know, one of the football conferences, like say Vanderbilt decides to drop football and get out of the SEC.
Well, a lot of people have mentioned like Temple and because Temple is really one of those, like that's a very clear example of they bet on football. They've devoted a lot of resources to football, and it looks like the rest of their program has suffered because of that, because they were a pretty consistently strong basketball program until they went all in on football, and now they've just kind of stunk at everything since then. So people have mentioned Temple as a former conference, member that we've had, that I guess would be a possibility to, depending on what they want to do. People have mentioned Wichita State, now that the American is down to eight members once those three who are jumping to the Big 12 leave. And Wichita State is the one of those 8 that doesn't have football. But that's a conference with a $10 million exit fee. And I don't know that exit fee decreases or goes away just because the conference is a shell of its former self. I don't know how all that works. And yeah, there are always, I know Wichita State has some billionaire supporters that can come up with $10 million pretty easily if they have to, but I don't know yet what they want to do. So I think we still have to watch the moving pieces. As it stands right now, I still don't think the Valley is stronger than the A10. The A10 just has too much depth from the top to the middle of the conference. I think that the programs generally outspend Valley programs. So I think we're still in the right home for now. Just got to keep watching and seeing what happens with these other moving pieces. But, credit to the Valley for being proactive here and getting a team like Belmont. This certainly makes the Ohio Valley a lot weaker and the Valley a lot stronger.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm one of those people that hates the idea of the Billikens going to the Valley, but I also really enjoy going to Arch Madness.
Yeah.
So it's exciting in that way. I want to see, Belmont, Loyola play. If that tournament gets better, that's fun for me. So I'd love to see Belmont in the A10, but clearly that ain't happening. So
and not once since Conference USA broke up have I thought that the Valley was a better spot for us. I mean, the A10, if we're looking to be more of a national brand as a university and as a basketball program, it was the place to go. We didn't get the Big East invite the first time around or the second time around. This is the next best place for us to be as a non-football school. We'll see how things develop. Again, we'll watch what Wichita State and some other schools do, but yeah, for now, I think we're still in the right place.
It's interesting that all these schools are moving to the big, the conferences to grow their brand, when I kind of thought, and I can very well be wrong because I am quite a bit, that maybe given the increase of technology and how we watch things and take in things, shows and movies more specifically than sports, but now that you have ESPN Plus, whether the conference is that big of a factor on brand, I thought that might decrease as we get further into kind of how easy it is to broadcast your own games.
That's probably true when you get outside the power conferences. I think the SEC brand, for example, is really for whatever reason, I have a handful of friends who went to Vanderbilt, and they get crushed in the SEC in most sports, especially the big ones, football, basketball, and I guess they actually are pretty competitive in a lot of the others. But those guys still root for SEC teams against other teams when it comes to bowl games or in the tournament or whatever. They're rooting SEC all the way, and I'm like, you guys at Vanderbilt are the one academic school in this conference of football schools that just pick on you constantly, and they're just so proud to be part of it, that they still root for it. I think you're right. It probably does matter less once you kind of get outside of that structure, but certainly at the top, and certainly when it comes to football, I think it's still pretty important.
We'll table that discussion, but Murray State also exploring their options. So we could see the OVC kind of have to raid another conference, a lower conference. So it'll be interesting to keep track of that.
Yeah, the other factor there is they just lost Austin P to the Atlantic Sun,
Oh my
which was
God.
kind of I think a football motivated move because the OVC doesn't really compete at that level in football. So that's another one that, that's a weaker basketball conference, I think, but it's at least for now. But yeah, that's not good for the OVC to have two different schools move in two directions in really about 2 weeks here.
This reminds me that like the area around Nashville has the most colleges per capita in the country.
Yeah,
Fun
more than you would
fact.
realize.
Yeah, Austin P, Vanderbilt, Belmont, you name it. Oh gosh, and I almost closed out our meeting. Yeah, I'm having a day. Anyway, yeah. So random fun fact for you guys. Women's basketball. We have conference scheduling news. And I don't know. I feel like I ask every time if we've gone over the entire women's basketball schedule, because every time I look at it, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it does. And yeah, we did go over it when it was fresh. It's one of those things where the names that you see on the schedule really pop because you
Yep.
see Mizzou, Kansas, Florida all in a row. Some other programs that are all pretty solid at our sort of peer group. We're playing some Ohio Valley and some Missouri Valley teams, of course, some Horizon teams. It's a solid schedule, but then you see that Florida and Kansas actually aren't. They're not great. They're pretty mediocre within the context of their conferences. So it's a good schedule at our level to get
Yep.
some signature wins against power conference teams if everything breaks right. But yeah, it is on paper a pretty attractive schedule.
The conference schedule not dissimilar in that way. Dayton, VCU, UMass, all home and home matchups, and we will only get Fordham at Fordham. So Fordham tends to be a decent team on the women's side. So I think if they would have finished out their schedule, I think they could have been more dangerous going. I don't even remember if they finished it out. I believe they played in the A10 tournament. But I don't.
Yeah, I can't even remember. I know they played fewer games than anyone else in conference, if memory serves. And that's our second A10 game of the season. It opens up at George Washington, and then they play on New Year's Day, and then they play 4 days later at Fordham, and then come home against VCU, and then go to Dayton. So it's a pretty tough schedule to start out the conference season because typically in recent years, Dayton has been the top team, and at least in the last couple, Fordham's been that number two. So they've got two tilts against those teams in the first 4 games.
Yeah, so they ended up playing their last game of the season, March 4th, 48-43 win, and then dropped their first Atlantic 10 championship game, 80-70 to UMass, and then played 2 games in the WNIT, and that was like a double elimination tournament, and lost both of them. So really tough ending for a team that has a pretty proud history.
Yeah.
I mean, they were 8-2 in conference when they had to shut it down.
Right.
So very unfortunate for Fordham because they do excel at women's basketball.
Right.
Men's soccer. I'm wearing this one because the Billikens are back. I don't care how bad George Mason is. That was a fun game. It was last night, Saturday. We're obviously recording this on Sunday. 4-0 win versus George Mason at Herman Stadium. Homecoming match, fireworks at halftime. It was quite a good night.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want to see from this team. We've talked about all year. They play that pressing, attacking style, and they're most fun when they kind of stick to that. They only wound up with 1 goal in the first half, but then really got cooking down the stretch in the second half. And this wound up being a blowout, and it didn't necessarily feel like it was going to be that the whole game.
Yeah, George Mason drops to 1-6-1, 0-2 in conference. What was really great about this homecoming is, I felt like everything was kind of right in the world when the fireworks started going off. Like I was like, okay, we're back. Like this is vintage St. Louis University, the innovators of the homecoming soccer game, and
Yeah.
it was a great game. A really nice crowd too. And what I learned, actually, shout out to Matt Cady, the ticket czar over at St. Louis University. He explained to me that the no-show rate for the registered attendees, so people who registered to attend the tailgate in the game through the Alumni Association, was actually microscopic compared to previous years.
Hmm.
So I think there's some sort of ridiculously high no-show rate for people who register for homecoming. Comparatively this year, like 95% of people showed up that registered. So um,
It's great.
great for St. Louis University, great for the soccer program, and great for the alumni relations team. I know Annalise Piven spearheads that, and she does an unbelievable job. So shout out to her. The game itself, though, 23rd minute, Kip Keller rises up like a salmon and heads a John Klein corner kick far post. There's something about the goals off corner kicks and crosses where they just look easy for our guys this season.
He just got up there, and it's not like he was uncontested. There were plenty of green shirts around him in the box, but no one got up. It looked like the way he headed that in, it looked like he was the only guy who felt like jumping. He just like, I think the next person's head was at like the St. Louis on his jersey. It's amazing how he got up for that. And Mason seemed like they were only going to defend him on the ground.
Yeah, verbal meme. Oh God, I forgot what my verbal meme was. I had a verbal meme and I forgot what it was. Yeah, no, verbal meme when your controller runs out of battery in FIFA or whatever. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll cut that out. Anyway. Kevin Commodi gets his second goal of the year in the 56th minute. The Billiken high press forces a turnover. It's John Klein who makes this happen. Commodi picks up the loose ball, sees the Mason keeper way off his line. I don't know what the hell he was doing, but Commodi chipped him. And I mean, that ball was able to bounce 2 and 3 times and roll in. That's how far out the keeper was for Mason. Absolutely stellar individual effort by John Klein to turn the ball over from Mason, and Commodi for picking his head up.
Yeah, I mean, he did exactly what he had to do on that one. Who knows how that goes if Mason's keeper plays it right, but yeah, he took what was given to him, and credit for being smart there.
Yeah, I really thought the Mason keeper had a really tough game in this one. I mean, you look ahead again now in the 79th minute, Isaiah Parker gets his second goal of the game. By the way, Isaiah Parker is my new favorite. He's been my favorite Billiken. I think I said it last podcast. Yeah. I mean, the kid, like the explosiveness and I mean, just incredible. The long run, he was on the ball. And that was about the easiest looking goal you'll see from outside the area.
I don't think there's anybody who's more exciting on this team, especially with the ball at his feet. I mean, like he changes speeds and directions so well. It's like he's got the ball on a string. Just a really, really skilled player on the ball. And watching him just kind of carve up that defense and just take it when he was ready. You mentioned the Mason goalkeeper, and it really stands out in this highlight. After that finish, all you see is the cape. He's just on the ground for like an inordinate amount of time. And that's the one that really dejected him. And you look at some of the final stats here, and we outshot them 25-6, 12 shots on goal, 16-2 in corner kicks. That was the point in the game where he had just had enough. And unfortunately for him, there were, a good 12 minutes left to go.
And the Billikens only needed 2 of 12 minutes to put the fourth on the board. And it was a beauty. Again, Isaiah Parker created this goal
Yeah.
Touch, just unbelievable touch and just incredible explosiveness. He gets to the end line, finds a wide open Betcher who flicks it in very cheekily. I think
Yeah.
is that how they say it? I don't
I
know.
think so. It was kind of his it was the inside of his heel, really. It
Yes.
wasn't quite the back of his heel, but it was off the inside, and he just did it so smoothly.
Mhm.
It looked like he was the only guy on the field who knew what was about to happen, but there was no doubt in his mind what was about to happen. It was a really nifty finish from a guy who has just been an offensive weapon for us all season.
Yeah, I believe that was his 5th goal of the season. A nice win for, this men's soccer team to come back home after a big win over UMass, get their conference home slate started off right. That's good enough for them to be in first place at 2-0 in conference. Duquesne technically tied with them, but I believe the Billikens have overall winning percentage on them. Rhode Island and Bonaventure both 1-0 at 3rd and 4th respectively. UMass, VCU, George Washington, St. Joseph's, and Fordham all 1-1. Davidson, Dayton 0-1 yet to play their second conference game. And then LaSalle and George Mason bringing up the rear 0-2. Looking ahead for men's soccer, an interesting trip. Rarely do we see the Billikens go to Kansas City to play a regular season game. Usually it's Kansas City coming here, but they will be at the artist formerly known as UMKC, 9/28 at 6 p.m. That it is unclear whether it's going to be pay-per-view, but it will be streamed on kcroos.com. KC is 1-1, 3-3. They played a bear of a schedule.
Yeah.
3 matches in a row against top 25 teams: Virginia Tech, James Madison, and Marquette, all 3 of which were losses. They drew Dayton 1-1, and they have a road win at SIUE 1-0. 1-3-3 may be it may be a trap.
Yeah, and they've got 2 ties in exhibition games, both Rockhurst and Creighton. They did tie number 15 Virginia Tech before losing 2-0 and 2-1 to James Madison Marquette.
You're right.
And then they've got a loss at Northwestern as well. They've played a lot of road games. Very road tested team. I don't think they've actually played at home since the exhibition games. So not only have they played that bear of a schedule, they've done it all on the road. So now they're going to come home and play SLU, who seems to be riding high. But this is not a team where you look at their schedule and can afford to get complacent. They're really good, and I think they're probably going to compete for a title out in the Summit, which is actually a pretty good soccer conference. Denver's usually good, so that's a solid conference. And they're certainly going to be in the mix for it.
Yeah, it kind of sounds a little bit like the Billiken women in a way.
Yeah,
I mean, the
that's a
Billiken
good
women,
comparison.
I think the Billiken women have probably struggled a bit more, but it definitely does have a little bit of a feel to it of Katie Shield's squad.
Yeah.
Then they come back home, they'll come back home and take on Fordham, 2-6-1. But this is a rematch of the A10 Championship 2020. Just a game that I know Patrick Schulte will want to put out of his head with a nice win in the rematch against Fordham. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I think this is one that they've probably been looking at for a while. Fordham's another team that's had a fairly tough schedule. They played Georgetown early in the season. Georgetown and Providence, who have both been ranked. Georgetown's actually like a top 5 team. Providence has kind of been in and out of the rankings. St. John's is always good at soccer. So they've had a fairly tough schedule. So 2-6-1. It's not like I'm saying that they would be 6-1-3 or something like that against another schedule, but and they are down a little bit from when we played them last season, but definitely not a team you can sleep on either. So it's going to be a hard fought game.
Looking ahead even further to when we will not be on the air, October 6th, St. Joe's, Wednesday night, 6 p.m. And then October 9th at VCU. That'll be at 6 p.m. as well. That's a Saturday night. I'm guessing all of these will be on ESPN Plus, any of the A10 games. St. Joe's is not listed as of right now. We did have a problem with the UMass game, so it remains to be seen as far as broadcast goes, whether they will be available to watch. Women's soccer, probably the most brutal loss of the Katie Shields era.
You'd probably have to go back to the early years. She did have a losing season or two to kind of start her tenure. So I know there were some tough ones early on, but yeah, it's certainly in recent years. That's definitely true.
Yeah, what we're talking about is a 3-1 loss at Duquesne. Not something I thought I would be saying on the podcast today. Duquesne got on the board pretty early. 28th minute, Emma Bundy scores her 5th of the season. Billiken's come back, and at this point in the 35th minute, Lindsay Heckel scores. You think, okay, we're going to be all right. That was not the case. 56th minute, Jamie Araujo scores for Duquesne to make it 2-1. And then in the 75th minute, Hannah Nguyen puts this game away. We talked about tough games for goalkeepers, and I think this was on par with Puricelli against Oklahoma State, I believe 2 years ago. Or maybe, I don't even know if it was Puricelli. It was, never mind then. Forget it. It was a goalie before her. But to one of Puricelli's, not her best game. I mean, she got chipped twice.
The second one for sure, the one that made it 3-1, which was Hannah Nguyen's first goal of the year, which would have fooled me because of the confidence she took this shot with. It was one of those, she was pretty far out. It wasn't like she like a fluke play that she wound up in the box with the keeper out a little bit. I mean, she wound up with the ball. Our defense was kind of pressing, so she got in behind him and chipped her from, how far out would you say she was? I mean,
oh gosh, 40.
Yeah, about 40. Yeah. So Puricelli at this point has no reason to be on her line. And that, given the trajectory of this shot, she would have had to be on the goal line to stop that ball. Mm-hmm. Because if she's up even a little bit, that arcing shot that winds up going in just under the crossbar, keeper's got no chance. And she had no reason to be on her line at that point. So I kind of forgive her for that one. But unfortunately, that's the one that put it away. And they kind of looked panicked that whole last 35 minutes or so after that second goal went in.
Yeah, like you mentioned confidence, and I think that might be the key here. I mean, again, reminding everybody, we are not huge soccer guys. I mean, Pete's a big U.S. women's national team fan. He went to the game the other night. But I mean, we're not, the soccer minds. We're not the great soccer minds. But it just seemed like Duquesne played confident and without fear this entire game. They said, you know what? Screw St. Louis University. We're going to go for it. If we win, we win. If we lose, I mean, that was going to happen anyway. So they came out, played their game, and they took it to St. Louis University. And the Billikens, it was probably the most frustrating game I've sat and watched in a long time on the soccer side, I think.
Well, this is another one where we outshot them 22-14, 9-5 in shots on goal, and then 10-1 in corner kicks.
Yeah.
And, we talked about last time, giving yourself that many opportunities off corner kicks, you're going to get lucky at some point. But I don't know what's going on. I mean, there's so many, I don't know, on paper, a lot of these games that are not going their way are things that sure look like they could and should have. They're just having so much trouble finishing. And Duquesne's confidence grew as that game went on. I mean, they smelled blood and they just went for it. So I don't think those stats necessarily do justice to how well Duquesne played in this game. And their keeper actually had an excellent game. So A lot of credit to her for sure. But yeah, it's just another one where you kind of scratch your head and go, I don't quite know what's wrong here.
Yeah, this is the first time they have conceded 3 goals in a loss specifically, and maybe the first time they've conceded 3 goals in any game since 9/14/2018. And then
64 games.
yeah, 64 games. And then the first A10 loss since 10/28/2017 versus St. Joseph's in the conference tournament.
Mhm.
You mentioned not being able to finish, and I almost would, I see communication issues and kind of chemistry of not knowing where someone's going to be at what time, because there's so many times where you'll see a player make the pass and the intended target goes off another way, and you just kind of like, you see them throw their head back, or
Yeah.
they become a little dejected, and I think it's starting to build. And I really hope that on a macro level they can turn this around, because
Yeah.
it's not good right now.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff snowballs. But certainly it seems like in the next game they shook some of that off.
Yeah, you definitely shake that off going up against a team like LaSalle for sure. I mean, they're near the bottom of the table. We'll get into the standings, but a 2-0 win on the fall festival day at Herman. Pumpkins and ciders and flannel. I didn't make it out there, but 49th minute, I watched on ESPN Plus. I still think it's amazing how far we've come with ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
49th minute, Lindsay Heckel scores. 64th minute, Caroline Kelly gets the brace. In this game, the Billiken just cashed in on the opportunities, something they didn't do against Duquesne.
Yeah, so that's that first who was the first one? Was that Heckel? Yeah.
Heckel, yes.
So Heckel, that was one where she just kind of she willed that one.
Yes.
That was a really nice run. She burned a couple defenders there, and her placement was perfect across the net, the other direction. She put it into the left side of the net with the keeper coming on. Just really good timing after a really hard run. So that one right there was all willpower, and she earned that one. That was a cool goal.
Yeah, that was just a textbook goal, and that, I mean, she buried it with power, with pace. I mean, everything about it was fantastic. The cross was right on the 6-yard box, and that was Friedrich who made that pass. So,
well, that was the next goal.
Yeah,
that was the next goal, though.
No, that was Heckel.
All right, am I getting this?
Caroline Kelly made a great run. She got.
All right, sorry. I'm getting their names mixed up. Kelly made the run. Okay, sorry. So Caroline Kelly's the one I was referring to. Yeah, and then Heckel's goal. Yeah, so this was off a corner kick, although it wasn't really, because they clear the corner kick back out to Slew. Friedrich winds up with the ball, and her first touch was a little too heavy. She almost kind of put it over the goal line, but maybe one step before it went out of bounds, she crossed it in. And yeah, you're right, hit Heckel right at the 6-yard line, who was just in the perfect spot for that ball, and buried it. That was a great finish, and way to salvage that corner kick.
And speaking of salvaging corner kicks and corner kicks in general, that's a place where we haven't seen the Billikens excel where we did in previous years. Because right. I mean, they would. I see there's so many goals in women's soccer off of repelled corner kicks because the ball does not get out far enough, and that's where I think the Billikens haven't taken advantage this year, and hopefully they can find that scoring touch in that position.
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of those games that's, like a lot of other games, Slew, dominating every statistical category pretty much, except saves, because they're forcing the opposite goalkeeper to really be on her game. We've seen some of these other ones end in ties or 1-goal losses, and like you said, they cashed in on opportunities here, and that was just it's a relief, and hopefully I say this every time they get a win, because they haven't really put a streak together, but hopefully this is the one where they turn the corner.
If we're looking at the standings, the Billikens sit firmly mid-table, 2-1. They are tied with Richmond and St. Joe's. UMass, Rhode Island, just above at 2-0-1. VCU sits at top of the table, 3-0 in conference, on a 3-game win streak. Below the Billikens, obviously you have Bonaventure, Duquesne, and Mason, and George Washington. I'm sorry, all sitting at 1-2. LaSalle, Fordham sitting at 0-2-1, and then Davidson bringing up the rear at 0-3. Looking ahead for the Billikens, they will take on VCU in Richmond on September 30th at 6 p.m. Like we said, they are top of the table currently in conference, 7-2 overall, 3-0 in conference, coming off wins at St. Bonaventure and George Mason, 1-0 and 4-1 respectively. No stream listed for this one, but again, as we said, with men's soccer, ESPN Plus most likely. 10-3, October 3rd. George Washington comes to town. They are 1-8-2, 1-2 in conference. They just picked up their first win after going 0-2 to start conference play with a 3-2 double overtime loss at VCU and a 2-0 loss at Rhode Island. They beat Richmond 3-1. So they are coming off, they're riding in, they'll be riding in maybe a little bit higher. They still have one more game, I think, before that contest against SLU. On the 10th of October, UMass comes to town. And then on the 14th, the Billikens will be in Philadelphia at St. Joseph's. Any last thoughts on women's soccer so far?
Just that I think this VCU game is going to be a good barometer of where they're at. It's a road game. VCU is probably the toughest remaining team on the schedule. Things kind of open up a little bit after there, and they'll have some spots where they've got consecutive games against teams that are definitely not in the same tier as them. So I'm really hoping that that an ESPN Plus or other stream is available for this one, because I think it could be a really important game for them.
Good news from Chaffetz Pavilion this weekend. The Billikens get 3-1 wins not from Chaffetz Pavilion, but coming out of Billiken volleyball team at Davidson. They win 3-1, and then they beat VCU earlier today, 3-2, an excellent win for this team. A well-needed conference win. VCU not as strong as they have been, but they are still perennial top of the conference. Volleyball wins 25-18. They win 3-2. They nearly gave this one away, but avoided disaster. 25-18, 25-16, 20-25, 20-25, and then 15-13 in the fifth set. Maya Taylor back leading the way in kills for the Billikens, and Carly Rogers added in defensively with 20 digs. Hey, I'm happy, man.
Yeah.
People give me, trouble for, being down on volleyball all the time, but I want to see them win it, and it does make me happy when they win. I mean,
yeah. And this, this is now 4 in a row. And we talk constantly about VCU and Dayton being the teams that they just can't seem to get around in conference. VCU was 2-0 heading into this one. Dayton's still 2-0, and yeah, even if VCU is not as good as they have been, they're still strong relative to the rest of this conference. So that's just a big win. Really like to see that.
Yeah, I think the conference might be a little down this year. I think Dayton is very, very beatable this year. I know they played a couple of very, very tough opponents. So I think the Billikens have a good shot to do well. I think my problem just always comes with the fact that I don't think the bar is set high enough personally. And that's where my problem comes in with.
Yeah, no, it is a beatable conference. I mean, nobody's more than 3 games over 5 or 3 matches over 500 right now. It looks pretty even at the top. Teams like Dayton, SLU, Duquesne, VCU are all kind of going to be in the mix, but Yeah, we'll see once they get to Dayton, but I'm starting to get the feeling that this team can do pretty well in conferences here.
Yeah, you got Dayton, St. Louis, Duquesne at the top. I suspect Duquesne will fall away there soon. Davidson sitting at 2-1 with VCU, Rhode Island, Fordham, George Mason, and George Washington all at 0-2. Coming up for the volleyball team, URI on October 1st and Fordham on October 2nd. Baseball, cool little experience for the for Billy baseball. They played St. Charles Community and hell of an experience for St. Charles Community College as well. They played a game at Busch Stadium. I recused myself from going to this game because it's my two alma maters. Yeah, no, very cool experience. And I mean, I believe they came away with a 10-6 win. I mean, it's a fall game. So, not, against a community college, but like we talk about all the time, community colleges, they can have aces, man. People get drafted from everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's probably not a whole lot in the way of game notes or box score or anything to take away from this one. SLU had a big second inning, scored 5 runs there. It looks like the bulk of their production came from a bunch of sophomores, which is also great to see. Younger guys getting it done. But really, I think the main hope here is that some of the Cardinals' September magic rubs off on them.
Oh, that voodoo, baby, that voodoo.
I keep hearing about it.
So some fun news. We have fun field hockey news. The Billiken field hockey team has won their first game of the season. Unfortunately, they dropped a 6-1 decision to Lock Haven earlier this weekend. I believe that was on Friday at 5 p.m. That's an A10 game, actually. Lock Haven plays there. I think we talked about it last pod that Lock Haven plays field hockey in Atlantic 10. A non-conference match against newly Division I Bellarmine. This will be the third time in 2 seasons they've played and beaten Bellarmine. Billikens win 3-2 in this one. As I said, last year they won 5-0 and 2-0 respectively in their games against Bellarmine. So maybe, a little unnervy, I think. Maybe we're not, continuing an upward trajectory. Both teams end up at 1-8 on the season. Emily Wastel, Lottie Tunison, and Lauren Pendergast got goals in this one for the Billikens. And I believe nobody scored after. I mean, I think the last goal was in the 45th minute. So all early offense in this one. And then the Billikens come away with the win. They really kind of dominated this one. Not something you hear very often, ever.
Right. Yeah, this is a much needed win. Obviously, their first of the season, but also coming off of, we talked about a couple of weeks ago what could have been a confidence killer, playing number 2 team in the country, Iowa, getting dominated. Then you start your A10 season against the probably, the defending champs and one of the best teams in the conference. So I was hoping they'd kind of have a little bit stronger performance against Lock Haven. I'm not going to pretend to know much at all about women's field hockey. But that's a team that was 2-4 coming into it and looked a little vulnerable. So I would have at least liked to see that one a little bit closer. But yeah, glad to see this win at Bellarmine. Hopefully, building a little confidence here. And this, like we said before, the story with this program is they just need to kind of get a little bit better every season. And now they have a chance to kind of build on that momentum. Playing Lindenwood, a team they've already beaten in exhibition. Get 2 wins in a row and maybe you can come back out a little bit stronger next time you face an A10 team.
Yeah, I think there's 2 games here that the Billikens have a chance to win. Just being completely honest with our listener base, because I mean, it is what it is. You have the Lindenwood game, which they should easily come away with a win. And then a Central Michigan team comes to town that has a tough record, but they've played some bear of opponents, and that will be later, even further into the rest of the season. They play a little non-conference game later on. But
I wouldn't completely discount Davidson either at the end of the
yeah,
season. I
no,
mean,
they're
they
not.
do have to go down to Davidson, but that's a team that's 2-6 and also kind of at the bottom of the conference. So you never know.
Yeah, I think I watched that one last year, and that was that was a fun game. They held them, they held tough in that one as well. So
Yeah.
we'll see how field hockey goes the rest of the season. Interesting enough, so they're going to play at Lindenwood Tuesday night, 7:15. Kind of a decent opportunity if you're in St. Charles to get out and do something weird. If
Yeah.
that's not, I mean, if field hockey is not normally your thing, but you're looking for something to do on a Tuesday night, that's
Yeah.
not a bad play.
Yeah. Get out if the weather's good, get outside, take in a game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I anything did I forget anything on our notes? Because I'm there's always one thing.
No, we covered all the notes. Just as always, follow us on Twitter and we've been giving little recruiting tidbits here and there. The staff has been out continuing to do open gym visits for players, and it seems like we're really concentrating on Texas, especially in the 2023 class. We're actively recruiting 4 top 150 kids out of the state of Texas, who are all just starting their junior year. So that's something to look out for. I think we're really in the mix on all 4 of these kids too. So, we'll be sharing, we'll have more to say as time goes on, and follow us on Twitter to see some of those little tidbits here and there.
Yeah, and definitely that our promo code with Home Field is still live. So head over to Home Field if you have not put in an order for these amazing shirts.
Do you know how long that's good for?
I don't. I'm gonna guess that it's probably. I'll have to reach out.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it expiring. It's just kind of like people just run out of being able to use it.
Yeah. If we find out, we'll share that information here and on Twitter as well.
Absolutely. Like I said, no episode. We may have a special episode next week on Monday. We're still not sure, waiting on confirmation. But if we can get it out to you, we will. It will not be a normal episode, though. It'll be more like an interview. It'll be an interview, actually. And we have some news on Larry Hughes that we haven't talked about. Should we stay? Are we a little stitious today?
I never like to count my chickens before they hatch, but things are progressing.
Things are progressing, and hopefully we will have Larry Hughes on the pod soon. And we're also working on one more other interview as well. So 3 interviews we're working on right now. Hopefully we have one Monday and then one later in October. So guys, thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter. Like and subscribe. Make sure you're rating on wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for listening. Go Bills.
Go Bills.